Right, how's it going, everybody? My name's Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue on December 28th with James Sykes, CEO of Baselode Energy, a uranium exploration company with 4 projects in the Athabasca Basin of Canada. Who's not here with us today, though, is your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy or sell anything. Instead, it will be a casual, general, and an impersonal talk between two individuals who you've likely never met, and they're just talking heads on the internet. And if your mama didn't tell you, you're not supposed to trust talking heads on the internet. Just don't use this conversation as independent research, because it's also going to include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. Also, because Baselode is a paying client of Resource Talks, which makes me biased. And also because the exploration space is one of the toughest places to profitably deploy capital in because of the many risks that are there. So please head over to setterplus.ca and read the company's official filings, as well as consult a professional investment advisor before taking your own decisions in the end. That all said, Baselode Energy is listed on a TSX-V under the ticker symbol FIND. That is FIND, and James tells me they're very good at that. And I've just done dozens of interviews with James and some other folks at Baselode, so I'm not doing a full company overview here. And instead, I'll just kick it off, James, with a question, because it's been a few weeks since you and I sat down for a chat, and you've told me that you've been very active. So do tell, what have you done for me lately?
Antonio, I hope I've done a lot for you. And by the way, it's great to be talking with you again. Happy holidays, and happy holidays to everybody watching. 2024, I think, is going to be a fantastic year, not just in the uranium space as it is, which will be triumphant, but for Baselode, I think we've got a lot planned. What have I been working on for you and other fellow investors is, we've completed 2023 drill program, multiple drill programs, very successful results. We've done a few things behind the scenes that we will be releasing in January, just talking about the mineralogy plus leachability studies and some of those results, which are very encouraging. And then planning and looking forward to 2024. Very exciting, as we will deploy the most capital we've ever spent on just greenfield exploration as a company.
Mm.
We discovered Ackio in our first drill program. So since then, basically all of our resources have gone into delineating Ackio and proving it up. We haven't really done much in the way of greenfield exploration. The Catharsis drill program last year, or this year, sorry, geez, I'm already jumping to 2024. So the Catharsis drill program earlier this year was the first drill program we've done outside of Ackio. And we're very happy with the technical results that we had out of that. But now it's time to just really amp things up and do what we do best at Baselode, and that is find uranium deposits.
How much money have you spent on everything that you have right now in total, do you think, since you started in 2020?
Funny enough, I should have that answer. I should have that readily available, but I don't. It's about 20 to 25 million.
Hmm. Total. So that's
Yes.
yeah,
That's
because
all geophysics, that's staking, that's drilling, that is everything.
right.
The largest drill program we had was 2022, where we spent about 10, $11 million all
Right.
year. $13 million all year.
How much did you spend this year?
This year was about seven all in.
Okay. Yeah, so it's above, well, so it's above 20 million, as you said. And then you
Yeah,
said how much are you going to spend next year? 11 and a half, something like that?
11 and a half, correct.
Okay. Well, so you're
With
coming up.
with just with about half of that probably going into greenfield exploration, the other half, or just more than half, going into Ackio.
Right, right. And while I'm bringing this up, we'll talk about all the rest that you just mentioned, hopefully then some more. But in the meanwhile, and I do know I always ask you this, but what's happening in the meanwhile, since you've listed in 2020, uranium is by now is $100, and it's about doubled since the beginning of this year alone. Your stock is yet still struggling. It's stuck at the same price as it was at the beginning of the year in terms of share price. Market cap probably a bit different after some of the cap raises. Um, but I mean, you started off 2020. I can pull up the chart here and just look at what's happening and you shot up immediately to over $100 million in market cap. Well, maybe not immediately, but in about a year or so. So you were at $100 million market cap, having spent virtually nothing on this project, or on all 4 of your projects. Since then, you've staked projects, you found a bunch of uranium and all that, and you're less than half of that market cap. So again, I've asked that before. But I have to repeat the question again. What's going on? What's happening with this?
I wish I knew. I really do. Uh, fortunately, we are not the only junior company that has that same track record in the share price this year. There's a lot of companies who are flat or down throughout the year. The juniors have not been performing as I guess a lot of people, including myself, would have hoped. Reminiscent of 2005, 2007 uranium price run, everybody went up. Juniors, majors, people who just got in for the sake of having uranium in their name, everybody went up. We're not seeing that happen this year. The majors are taking off. Anybody with a deposit that looks like it's going into production, they are moving, rightfully so.
Right.
Juniors have not gained any traction yet, and I think their time will come, and I think it will be happening in 2024. But there's just a little bit few differences this time around than there was last time. Again, the ETFs, there's plentiful ETFs now that provide an opportunity for investors to go and really play the uranium space so that you're diversified amongst your portfolio with an ETF instead of just picking one or two companies or even 10 companies on your own. So those ETFs, I do think, are taking away from some of the investment opportunities, which are affecting the juniors. But with the ETFs purchasing those juniors as well, that is a huge boon as well. And then you've also got the physical uranium. Now, there was physical uranium in the previous cycle, but it just seems to be more in your face this time, and people have more accessibility to it. So as the price of uranium moves up, why not buy into the physical uranium stocks where they're obviously their assets are appreciating value every time that price goes up 50 cents, $1, their assets are worth that much more. So that in itself also provides another opportunity for investors to get into. But we've recognized that the juniors are not really moving, and that's a big reason we are doing what we're doing in 2024. We don't want to put everything on to Ackio this year, because even though we've had amazing results, we're happy with everything we've seen. It's shallow, high-grade uranium mineralizations, everything we sought out to find. We just believe that the market hasn't fully digested the story. They don't understand it. But given that the price of uranium is hot, if we make another discovery, which is what we're aiming for next year, then I think that will solidify us as being a company to watch, as we would have 2 deposits within a short time frame. We've got my track record behind me for multiple discoveries, and I think we've just got the projects to do so.
You're mentioning the ETFs here, and that's interesting to me because I've been wondering what the net effect has been on you since they picked you up in those ETFs, because it's a wild ride when they pick you up, and then it's a wild ride when they kick you out too. So have they been hurting you or benefiting you more?
I'd say benefiting for sure. I've no doubt about that, actually. The amount of investors I've recently met who've just reached out and been like, "Oh, I found you guys on the ETF, blah blah blah." It's just that in itself has been a nice bonus to being on the ETFs. But and that seems to be where a lot of people who are new to the space are going to first. They check out the ETFs, they check out who are the ETFs carrying, and then they do their own due diligence off that.
And so you've recently been added to the URNG, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep, we saw that for sure.
Yeah.
About time.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah, I had to question some of that. Like, why are we not on there? And others were, but good. Nice to see it happen. Hopefully they will purchase some more.
What's the criteria to add you or kick you out? Do you know that by heart?
I don't know it by heart. I know for some of the other ones, it was a 50 million market cap, which we've been skirting here and there. And yeah, if we can get the share price just up a little bit higher, then we can meet that 50 million market cap and just have to sustain it.
That's right. Yeah. You're sitting at about 42 now. I'm looking at the chart here next to me. That's why I'm looking away. But yeah, okay, good. So about 11.5 million you're gonna spend next year. How much do you have left in the bank right now? Because it's flow through in hard dollars, I assume.
Yeah. We'll have at least 5 million hard dollars. So the 11.5 million is all flow through, and that is a commitment we have to spend by December 31st of 2024. So that's have to spend. It's a great problem to have. And that's why we think we're going to be successful, because I found that we are very cautious and efficient. Efficient's the right word. Efficient and effective with our exploration dollars. We
Mm,
pick amazing targets. We pick great projects to begin with, all staked with the same criteria, looking for massive structures that would have permeated through the rocks, allowing porosity and fluid movement. And now we're looking for the best targets along those structures, and we've got a number of them. We've
right.
got we've got structures and targets, every which way we look, and
Mm.
they're all viable.
How's raising flow through been? I assume, or I expect sort of bankers to be bombarding you with flow through offers now, given that you're a uranium company, end of the year, yada yada. Is that being the case?
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially around September, October, everything was hot. Bankers had sufficient funds to deploy towards uranium space. And that's apparent with a number of the raises that we've recently seen, not just from Baselode, but you look across the whole uranium sector. There's been a lot of money generated in the
Mm.
Athabasca uranium plays alone, just in the past few months. So it's been great to see the investment appetite there.
Right. Do you have an idea? Do you know who ended up owning the shares on the back of that flow through and charity flow through? Because we obviously don't want them to, dump after 4 months in one day.
Unfortunately not. It's Yeah, and that is one of the risks and one of the issues with flow through placements. And to be honest, uh, that's why I believe a lot of the juniors are level and even with no price movement up, is because we do a lot of flow throughs and people don't know what they're investing in. Now with Canada's with their critical metal flow through, there's such a tax incentive on purchasing flow through shares that the investors really don't have any reason to hold. They're almost incentivized to sell at a loss, which hurts companies left, right, and center.
Right.
Like people aren't in it to make money off the stock going up anymore. They're in it to make money off the stock going down, which is counterintuitive. If you don't like the company, don't invest. Simple as that. But c'est la vie. It is what it is. It allows us to raise money at less dilutive, which is always nice, because that's the other part of the problem we have to go against. But I preferably obviously like to have investors who really believe in the company, like our long-term vision, although we're trying to make it a short-term vision as quick as possible. Uh, yeah, we're in it for longevity, and we hope the
Last time
investors are too.
you raised this the flow through that you did, that's you did it with Red Cloud, right? So they
Yep.
basically placed the shares for you. A couple of years ago, you did a sort of a comparable thing that also kind of hurt you. I remember that. I was hurt at the time as well. Is that who did you did it with last time? Was it Red Cloud as well?
Yes. We've done
Okay.
a number of deals with Red Cloud, and I think it was 2022 or 2021. 2021, after the discovery, when we did the 10 million bot deal placement with PI, and that was done at a
Mm.
dollar 10. And since then, we have not been able to maintain those levels.
Hmm. Right. Okay. No, but I just wanted to know who's doing the financing. Well, they're potentially keeping that in mind because it's not. I mean, it's not good marketing for them either to have those kind of things happening. So my hopes here, and I don't know what your thoughts on that is, but my hopes here are that they're trying to place those shares in the right hands, basically.
Of course, that's what I'm hoping as well. And we know the Red Cloud guys, and we know them quite well. We've known them for a number of years, and we like to believe that they are doing that putting funds into the right hands.
Yeah. Okay. You Oh, do you have an idea of what G&A is going to be next year? But well, I am going to hope the 5 million is going to be enough for a couple of years of G&A. But yeah, do you have an idea of what G&A is going to be?
Yeah, it's barely anything. We keep a very low overhead. We're probably burning about 50 to 60 grand a month,
Mm,
and that's the way we like to keep it. We value putting money in the ground preferentially, because that's where discoveries are made. That's where your share price action takes off.
mm,
We're not going to appreciate our share price by paying ourselves umpteen figures for salaries, or traveling here, there, and everywhere. We put the
mm,
money into the ground. We look for results. We build our company off those results.
mm. Okay. And but so that basically comes down to there's no need to raise capital below the current 40 cents or something like that.
No, not at all.
No. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
well cashed up, both for exploration purposes and for keeping the lights on. I,
That's
I figure
clear.
we've got plenty of money to keep the lights on for about 5 years plus.
Mm, okay, that's very clear. Um, And that money is going to be used, like you see on Twitter, for quote, a lot of drilling, and even more drilling. Maybe we can talk through. Maybe we could do sort of an overview that's more structured on what exactly you're going to be drilling. Sort of, if you will, we could do it alphabetically, actually. So A, B,
Let's
Bear,
do it
you have.
sequentially. Let's do it sequentially.
Okay, sure.
So yeah. So basically we just start out with Catharsis first, and then we can
Mm.
do alphabetically thereafter because it kind of fits.
Or chronologically, what are you going to drill first?
Well, yeah. Chronologically, sequentially is Catharsis, and
Okay.
that's our winter drill program because our camp is right off the highway, easily accessible, easy to pull in, easy to demobilize. And this year we've got a number of targets. I think we're drilling what, 5 targets?
Hmm.
At least 5 targets that are planned. We're looking for about 2,000 meters of drilling on Catharsis. Some of these targets are freaking ripe. They're beautiful looking targets. They were when we drilled earlier this year as well, but these ones I think are a little bit more superior as they have a little bit more cohesiveness to them. Uh, so we'll see what happens. That's mid-February. By end of January, mid-February, we should be building our camp, getting it going, and by mid-February to end of February, we should be drilling. We will be helicopter supported this time, whereas
Hmm.
earlier this winter we were ground supported. We made this decision to go helicopter supported before the lack of winter conditions even set in up north.
Hmm.
Right now, Saskatoon is green. I've never seen a green December since I've lived out here. So I can only imagine that northern Saskatchewan is also suffering from lack of snow and lack of cold weather. They can't really build up ice. Hopefully, it's been cold enough to build up ice and not have the snow to insulate that they can build up thick ice. Anyway, we're going helicopter supported because we can access more targets that way, and we feel that we're very happy with the way that we have done our Ackio exploration, which has all been helicopter supported, that we're going to deploy that methodology moving forward on all of our projects. We just think it does cost more, but there are some much added benefits to going helicopter than ground based.
Hmm.
So
Cost
Catharsis,
more. W-
it costs more, but when it comes to the accessibility on some of these targets, there you have to rely on ice roads. You have to rely on winter conditions to get to some of these environments. Sometimes the river is always flowing and they won't freeze during the winter time. So how are you going to get to these targets? There's no other way but a helicopter, or you put a bridge in. We just want to avoid all of those issues. And we know talking with the environmental groups and the indigenous groups that we have for Hook, and they've seen our exploration and how we've differed from our peers that people are used to, they love it because you can't see our drill pads. You
hmm.
can't tell where we've drilled. Yeah, if it becomes a mine, then all of that doesn't matter, but it's not a mine yet. So as it stands, keeping the ground intact, preserving nature and the environment goes a long way with our stakeholders up north.
Hmm.
So we will continue that approach.
Hmm. Uh, when I said cost more, I was going to ask how much is that? 800 to 1,000, something like that?
For the Catharsis drill program,
Yeah.
or
A
for the
meter. I mean,
helicopter.
no,
Oh,
just all in a meter for Catharsis.
all in because we have to bring in the camp and demobilize it. That adds a cost.
Hmm.
So this year we did that this year, and we're about $800 per meter.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, 750, $800 a meter all in. Very high, not what we're used to. As when you look at Ackio, we're about $525 all 525 meters dollars per meter all in. Oh, geez, tongue twisters.
You sound like a U.S.
Uh,
politician now.
I guess, eh? Geez, maybe I should run.
Okay, no, but
But
so
yeah,
800, so about 800 bucks a meter all
I think
in.
we can bring that down though. I think we
Okay.
can bring that down.
Hmm. Okay. How many meters are you hoping to get out?
2,000 at Catharsis. So
2,000 at
we
Catharsis.
have about 1.5 million planned for Catharsis drilling.
Okay. Okay. 1.5. Okay. Good. How many meters do you think are you going to be drilling a day?
At where, sorry?
Per day. Like what's a shift? How
Oh,
many meters?
whew. That's usually a big variable, but typically around 80 meters a day plus.
Hmm. Okay. Just trying to
Sometimes
figure out
sometimes our
when.
sometimes our shifts are pulling off 60 meters to 80 meters a shift.
Hmm. Well, okay. But I'm just trying to figure out when do you think that, because you're starting at mid-February, when is it going to be done? When are we getting assays?
4-week program.
Hmm. 4-week
Yeah,
program.
it's basically on average, you can expect about 500 meters per drill per week. That's a safe average to work with. The drill company that we've employed, that we've worked with basically exclusively since we started as Baselode, have been top notch and have delivered more than that,
Mm,
typically around 700 meters plus. So they're very effective, and we expect the same type of results from Catharsis drilling.
mm,
But yeah, I would still err on the 3 to 4 weeks to complete 2,000 meters. Obviously, it's we're dealing with radioactive minerals, so we will have SINT results. If anything, we'll have a end of drill program summary and results as they're available. If there's nothing too exciting, we might just throw the results into a quarterly report because we would already have released the SINT results and the drill hole results.
mm. And 500 meters, that's about 2 holes, I assume.
About that, yeah.
Okay, so 10 holes, so give or take what you're
Yes.
going for. Okay,
Yep.
sure. And you're asking this just in Saskatchewan, I assume, not too far
Yeah.
away. Okay,
Yeah, right down the road. We drive everything right to the lab.
right. All right. And then everything I assume is planned and allowed in terms of licenses, First
Yes.
Nations, everybody's happy and healthy up there.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay,
Green lights all across the board.
good. So that's Catharsis. About 10% of your budget is going to go there, right? So you said 1.5
Yeah.
million, give or take.
Yep.
So 10%, what happens after Catharsis?
Catharsis, then we take a little bit of a break while spring melt occurs. And probably around May, we'll be going out to Hook. We demobilized some of the camp from Hook last year, and we need to rebuild it. So that'll be occurring in May to support our Ackio and our Hook drill program.
Hmm.
So at that same time, though, we are going to be doing an ANT survey from Fleet Space Technologies. So recently, ISO has done some of their ISO has used their technology. Power or Nickel in Quebec, they've used their technology as well. We were questioning quite a bit of it, but we've eventually come around and said, yeah, we'll give this a run on Ackio. So during the month of May, we will be doing some ground-based geophysics, trying to understand the structural system that we see at Ackio, but also deploying it on other targets that we have within the Hook project.
That's
And
an
then by
interesting part.
June, yeah, we
Um,
can talk about that.
yeah, that's an interesting part. Uh, what is happening? The first thing in May, what's happening? Are you going on Ackio or are you going away from Ackio? Still staying on
May,
Hook.
yeah, we're still staying on the Hook project. So
Mhm.
May is completely focused on the Hook project. Again, the can't build on Hook, but deploying ANT audio, um, what is it? Audio tomography. Basically, it's like an interesting seismic gravity slash hybrid type of technology that uses natural noises from the earth. I know it sounds hokey pokey,
It does.
but yeah, no, this is the stuff that I kind of like. I like that's MT. We've flown a lot of our projects with MT, which is magnetotellurics, and magnetotellurics uses the natural electromagnetic signature of the Earth. So you're not polarizing any currents or anything like that. So it's these type of systems, they do work. They have their applications, and we haven't done any sort of ground geophysics on any of our projects. So this ANT survey will be the first that we do, and it will be deployed on Ackio, which is what we need to see. We've done all of our drilling based on airborne surveys, which have limited resolution, and especially with depth application, there's no real strong 3D depth application that we can use. So this ANT survey will hopefully show us the structures that we need to drill at Ackio to find more mineralization at depth. That's the whole focus for this survey.
Hmm.
And then by June we start drilling Ackio.
Realistically speaking, if we just move away from Ackio for a second here, is there the potential? Could there be another deposit on Hook that's not geologically related to Ackio?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I I can't guarantee. I wish I could guarantee, but no, we've got some targets that are absolutely phenomenal. Think they look perfect. They look perfect for discovery potential. The thing with the way that we target is I can almost guarantee 99.5% of the time we will have massive structure, we will have hydrothermal alteration, but whether there's uranium in that system is always the thing that needs to be answered.
Mm.
And no one can tell that. It's impossible to tell that. But we're very effective with the way we explore. And so these targets that we're looking at outside of Ackio have these similar type of signatures that I've seen on other deposits elsewhere. So we can infer that there will be great structure. We can infer that there will be phenomenal hydrothermal alteration, exactly what we need to find. The only thing we can't infer is there any uranium there? The only way you find that out is to drill.
That's
There
right.
is a target, one of our favorite targets, and we've I wanted to drill it this year, summer program this year, but we decided to kind of wrap things up. Market wasn't there, market hadn't come around yet. Almost as soon as we wrapped everything up with the drill program, then the uranium price started taking off again. But now that the market is hot for uranium, now it's hot for another discovery. So we didn't want to waste our discovery when nobody was paying attention to uranium. But now that the price is hot, people are looking at uranium space again. If we can make another discovery on the Hook project, fantastic. And the target that I really speak to is it's 15 kilometers south of Ackio. And it's along the same structure, the exact same structure that hosts Ackio. This thing's mega scale. This is a crustal structure. It's a scar on the face of the earth, is the way I like to refer to it, because it just stands out clear as day.
Mm.
But it's such a deep structure. It's such a strong structure that I can guarantee it has been reactivated time and time again. So if this is that 15-kilometer structure, up here is Ackio, down here is this other target.
Mm.
So it's almost like a mirror image. And they both occur right at the ends, at the terminus of this crustal scale structure. So that's typically where you get a lot of chemical reactions, where you have a lot of the right, I guess, the right circumstances or the right fluid dynamics conditions are there to allow uranium mineralization to precipitate, to form and grow these deposits. So long as the fluids are there carrying uranium, these targets have I believe they have the right conditions to precipitate uranium.
Mm.
And if the big target is successful, the cool thing about this target area is that it's got pearls on a string. Got other targets we can just go boom, 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 hopefully find more. And typically that's what these uranium deposits are all like. They're all pearls on a string. It's not very often that you just find one deposit just on its own. Typically you will find more little beads and pearls that you just go, oh, let's go 100 meters up, 300 meters up, 500 meters up on strike or whatever it is, or down dip. And you just keep finding more and more and more and more.
How does all that fit with whatever you've been finding east of Ackio, though?
Fits perfectly. Because what we found east of Ackio, we do believe is all the same structural and alteration, like fluid movement system that hosts Ackio. It's just on the farther eastern limits to this. And there's probably still more to the east of this whole thing.
Mm.
And we believe that all of these structures that we're seeing will continue down at depth and connect at depth. So it's
Mm.
basically like a big, it's called a flower structure. Whereas you've got your flower coming up, your stem, and then everything just goes boom, branches off. Let's make a cool branch. There we go. Make a branch, and everything just branches off. So you get your structure going bang, 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 different ways. And that's kind of what we're seeing happening at Ackio.
Mm.
So whether the structure we're seeing to the east will be fully mineralized or not, or if we chase that at depth, will that become mineralized? If we chase Ackio at depth, will we continue to see mineralization down there? Will we find larger pods? Will we find higher grades? We don't know. It's just these things need to be tested. They need to be sought after. By walking away and not doing those doesn't do us any justice.
Mm. Sure. And in terms of depth, what are you doing in terms of depth on Ackio?
We've left a lot of room from 200 to 500 meters wide open. and that will be our focus. Now that we've done a lot of the low-hanging fruit and we've got a better idea of the structural controls, and then in correlation with this ANT survey, where we're going to hopefully target some very exciting, we're going to hopefully drill some very exciting targets at depth between that 200 to 500 meter range. So as you drill deeper, your costs go up. And again, that's why it's really important to have these targets already defined at depth so that you can drill them off. If you hit, great. If you don't, it's back to the drawing board. And then while you test your next target, next target, next target. If they all fail, then you're definitely back to the drawing board and trying to find something else. Or do you sit there and write things off and say, okay, you know, we've drilled to our extent, we're done. Or is there still potential for more? Because again, these things are like pearls on a string. If we're following Ackio at depth and we're seeing Ackio kind of like this, and all of a sudden you can lose it for hundreds of meters, can you still trace it at depth? Can you still pick it up? So we need to make sure that we don't leave anything behind for the Ackio system.
And those 7 pods by now, right? Do you have
Nine
nine?
pods.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Because okay, 9 pods. Are all of them open at depth and laterally, or not all of them?
No, not all of them. Just really pod 4, which now looks like it's combining with pod 7. That is the largest of the pods, and we do think that one is open at depth, but also laterally. We do think that some of the other pods are, especially pod 7, the shallow part of pod 7, extending that to the north, where we are seeing our highest grades. For example, hole 102, which was one of our last news releases, 8 meters at over 1% U3O8. That is open on strike for about 75 meters to the project boundary. That has to be followed up. We do believe there's more, because when you know, at that project boundary, 92 Energy, who will soon become Atha Energy, they drilled a hole where they had 10% over half a meter. I think it was like 5% at 1.5%. 5 meters at 1.5%. So very close, same GT wise as our 8 meters at 1.1. So it looks like there's a pretty good high grade corridor happening. But 75 meters to a lot of people might not sound like a lot. But when you consider the possibilities of high grade uranium in the Athabasca, and that's what the Athabasca is known for, if you're hitting 20% uranium over decent widths, it does not take a lot of that mineralization to really develop a sizable uranium deposit. 25 meters by 25 meters by 25 meters at 25% is going to give you more than 20 million pounds. So you can fit one of those within that 75 meter corridor very easily. And that's why you don't give up on these high grade sections. That's why you really, when you start seeing those type of intervals, you have to drill more, and you have to make sure that you don't miss these tiny little things. We're drilling on 25 meter centers. So you can fit one of those 25 meter pods anywhere between where we've already drilled. They're that tiny, but the value is there. And if we do find something like that, well, you know, we're about 100 meters from depth. That's still open pit range, especially when you've got mineralization that's already occurring within 25 meters, 30 meters of the surface. So there's a lot of good things going for Ackio, and I really want to find more there, and I really want to find that high grade nugget. Doesn't have to exist. It'd be nice if it does, but it doesn't have to exist. Ackio is already kick-ass the way it is.
I do want to talk about 92 Energy and whatever's happening there, but possibly towards the end of the conversation or a little bit later on. But and also, this may sound silly where I'm going with this, and we probably talked about this before, but you have to remind me. So when I'm looking at, let's say, a porphyry or a CRD deposit or whatever, they have these they're called feeder zones where everything comes from. Would that be the case with this type of deposit too, or like how is it deposited? Where does it come from?
That's a debatable question that I honestly can't answer, because you've got the end member schools of thought. One end member says all of the uranium comes from the sandstone. The other end member says all of the uranium comes from the basement rocks. The only thing they both have in common is that they need structures. They need basement hosted structures to deposit uranium in them. when you start looking at which are the structures that really host the best uranium deposits, they are crustal scale structures. They are structures that have a huge depth potential and penetrate tens of kilometers at depth. Is the uranium coming from those fluids? I honestly don't know. Are they coming from the sandstone and mixing with those deep fluids? I don't know. I like to believe both. I like to believe that there is a basement component and a sandstone component, and I think that's probably the best mixture. I think that there are some areas that could be completely basement hosted deposits without any sandstone contribution. But again, the key is to find those structures, and that's what we did from day one. We got in early enough. When we staked all of our projects, we looked for those structures, and I'm confident we have staked them.
But there's nothing like intrusions, for example, or something like that you could look for.
There are pegmatites. There are radioactive pegmatites, and that is one of the basement source rocks that people believe uranium could come from. But they're emplaced along the structure during the orogeny, during the mountain building event, and they're partial melts. They're not pegmatites that would have come from a deep source like you would in a porphyry deposit, where they come from the mantle and just go and find their way up. These things are melting along the structure and then migrating up along the structure from the host rocks that are already in the area. Uranium loves to go into fluid very easily, so it would be incorporated in those partial melt systems very, very quickly and easily.
Okay. And how's the money going to be split between looking, basically between infill and step out on Hook, as in, and how much money you're spending on chasing whatever's happening at Ackio versus trying to make another discovery in Hook?
About, if we just take that sum apart, the Hook project sum, about 67% will go into Ackio, and so that's Ackio extension, that's Ackio delineation where we need to, that's Ackio drilling at depth, that's drilling the sandstone target at Ackio, which we still have and is wide open. And then about 33% goes into the exploration side of things.
Okay.
So again, with the minimum that we are looking for on the exploration side of things at Hook is about 2 million.
2 million on the exploration side.
The bare minimum.
Okay.
We could with this. Sorry, it's actually more than that. I was just thinking drilling, because we've got the geophysical survey that we're doing as well. As far as Ackio goes, we're looking at putting in about 6 million into Ackio, 6 to 7 million. That price might come down. We're still evaluating where we want to drill and how many drill holes we need, how many meters, blah, blah. But yeah, we need to put a substantial amount of exploration into Hook itself to find the next deposit on the Ackio system. If we can make another discovery in this area, then I think it really builds up the potential. Then we've got this hub and spoke type of idea, that now you've got multiple deposits all within the same idea, and that would hopefully encourage the infrastructure to be built to access these, and hopefully encourage more participants into Baselode, but also even better, encourage some of the majors to have a stronger look at our project.
But you're also doing metallurgy in the meanwhile.
Yep.
That's within
for the same reason.
Okay. Yeah. How
we believe Ackio is mineable. There's nothing that we have seen so far that says it is not a mineable deposit. And so trying to de-risk it for the investors, for the mill operators, that's an important part of what we are trying to accomplish.
Right. But what specifically are you doing for metallurgy?
Again, figuring out the mineralogy, because even with uranium, if you don't have the right mineralogy, you're never going to mine it. You're never going to be able to process uranium from it.
Right.
That exists in a number of deposits globally that I encourage every investor to have a look at. There are some reasons, mineralogical reasons, that some deposits have been stalled for decades. And that's all mineralogy. Wrong type of mineral, yeah, doesn't matter what price you've got. But so the mineralogy is very key. Leachability, which is also part of the whole system. But if you can't leach uranium at an effective rate, then again, it's almost what's the purpose? Now, if you've got 100 million pounds of uranium, but you're only recovering 60% of it, that's a huge loss to your potential revenue.
Mm.
So understanding if you've got the right type of uranium that would get the most recover the most uranium from the milling process, but also meet the the same milling process that is being operated now. Now, if all the criteria are right, theoretically, you can just take your materials and throw it into the mill.
Mm.
And that's what we're trying to prove.
But it's uraninite in the Athabasca Basin is what you're dealing with, so that's your host
Not all the
mineral.
time. Not all the
Okay.
time.
I always operated under. What else could it be?
Coffinite. Coffinite's another big one that shows up. That's if it's whether coffinite is it's whether it forms as a primary mineral or as an alteration form of uraninite. The amount of coffinite you have in your deposit is a factor because it's not as easily recoverable or leachable as uraninite is. Uraninite, of course, is the big one, and that is yes, 95% of uranium deposits, 99% of uranium deposits, everything that's been mined in Saskatchewan has all been uraninite.
For good reason too, because it's good recoverability. What are
Yeah,
sort of the typical recovery rates of coffinite?
low.
Mm.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know they're not there. I know they're not what they are for uraninite. Uraninite's 95, 98%
Mm.
recovery.
Yeah. Well, uraninite is basically uranium.
Yeah, it's
So
exactly. Yeah, it's pure uranium.
yeah, it used to be called pitch blende.
It used to be called pitch blende.
Why don't we
Yep,
call it
but
that
not anymore.
anymore? What happened? Who took it away?
I don't know.
I
It was a
like it.
German thing. Probably it was pitch blende is a German word.
Mm.
And given their stance on nuclear energy, they probably just decided they didn't want it anymore. They wanted to be associated with Germany. So I don't know. I'm just making stuff up.
Sounds like a
But
movie that Vin Diesel would play in for some reason. I don't know why.
yeah, I don't know.
What is
No
this?
idea.
What is this story ultimately going to depend on? Because I'm getting the building blocks. That's one thing. Recoverability, metallurgy. That's what it's going to depend on. But like for example, if this was 900 meters deep, I'd know to see that it's going to depend 80% on, let's say, high grade. If it were, let's say, 0.1% average grade, I'd say that it would depend on size. But you're somewhere in between on depth and on grade. And so what's the main ingredient that you need to prove up here for Ackio to start looking like an actual mine?
The economics, the mineability, the open pit style of this looks very simplistic, but that's something we want to investigate further. We're pretty confident the material can be milled through current through current setups already at Key Lake. We believe that the size is there. Just looking at back of the envelope and just doing some very simple volumetric calculations, the looking at some of the historic mines globally, but also in the Athabasca, I question why some companies would have mined 50,000 pounds of uranium for something that you had to go underground for.
Hmm.
Well, during the heyday, well, actually, no, it wasn't even the heyday. Uranium prices were fraught. So why go down after 50,000 pound deposit? Why do an open pit for sub 1 million pound deposit?
Hmm.
Why, look at Uranium City where they had over 17 mines? I think they had 17 mines that were operating. The vast majority of those were all less than 1 million pound deposits, and yet they got mined.
Hmm.
So, what is size? That's my question for people. I think size is not a big thing, especially given this uranium cycle. What we're seeing right now hasn't been witnessed since the 70s. We're seeing the largest nuclear buildouts occurring in history since the 1970s. The price ran in the 1970s. This is when all of these mines were being mined out, all of these little sub 1 million pound things. 1950s, 1970s, when the bomb was going, and then as soon as nuclear energy came about, there was a huge push for more uranium mining. Everything under the sun was getting mined. That's the type of environment we are seeing now.
Hmm.
As Yoda said, size matters not. Judge me by my size, do you? Where you should not.
That's what I tell my wife. But with those results that you have coming out of there and that you're hoping to see, coming out of there. Do you still think that it's prudent to aim for a maiden mineral resource to come out next year? Would you like to explore more around Ackio and around Ackio before coming up with something?
No, I would like to have both. I'd like to have the resource come out. Like I'm size agnostic because again, for the reasons mentioned, I do believe that it would be a mineable deposit. Um, but I would like to get a resource out that covers anything from 0 to 200 meters depth, leaving everything beneath that kind of open. If we're discovering more throughout the year, then yeah, having that open, just having the open potential for more mineralization, especially if we discover more, then it shows that we have room to grow the deposit size, and just it's upside potential.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
What?
numbers that investors can sink their teeth into and really get a grasp on things, plus upside potential. That's the win-win scenario. Plus another discovery on Hook, plus another discovery on Catharsis, maybe two.
Hmm.
Bear, Shadow, yeah,
Yeah.
we're good.
We'll talk about Bear and Shadow for sure, but what I'm thinking about is what is the risk of, the maiden mineral resource not being big enough to the market's liking? Because you can say there's upside potential, and it's nice if you have a big MRE and upside potential, but if you have sort of an average MRE and upside potential, well, is the market at a state where it's going to care about that upside potential if the MRE is not big enough? That's sort of what I'm thinking about.
I would probably side with you and say no. But
Mm,
again, I don't know what the market wants to see as far as a mineral resource estimate, because what the market wants to see and what we want to see are honestly two different things. Market wants to see big numbers all the time, which is why we keep getting slammed. Oh, your grades aren't high enough. It's like, who cares? Look at the history of mining globally.
mm,
These grades don't matter. It's all uraninite, easily leachable.
mm,
If grades mattered, Africa wouldn't be in production. All of these things in Namibia, they would never have gone into production if grades really mattered, despite their size. So the
mm,
grades don't matter. The size doesn't matter considering what we're seeing trying to get mined out today. Like it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy that people just have their focus on one thing and one thing only, that you need to have 100 million pounds. And I
mm.
think I think some of that comes from a rumor that even I heard back when I was with Hathor. So we're talking 15 odd years ago. To bring, and this, whether whoever it came from, wherever it came from, I honestly don't know. But the thing was, to put an open pit into production would require 50 million pounds. To put a underground deposit into production would require 200 million pounds. For the longest time, I believed that as well. But I know that is not true, because Cameco, after McArthur River, were looking to develop the Millennium deposit. Now, Millennium is not a 200 million pound deposit, and it is deeper and probably harder to access than McArthur River. It's nothing like McArthur River was, where they had 250 million pound nugget at over 20% average grade.
Mm.
Millennium is nowhere close to that. Millennium is a smaller deposit than what they're, sorry, it's a lower grade and even lower tonnage than what they're still mining out of McArthur now. So why would a company like that, if you need 200 million pounds to bring something into production, why would they go after Millennium? Because those numbers, that 50 million pound, 200 million pound, must incorporate building a mill. If you don't have the mill to build, you can drop those numbers. You don't need your 50 million pound to mine an open pit if you've got a mill already existing. You don't need 200 million pounds to mine out a basement hosted deposit if the mill is already existing.
What percentage of the
That's the
capex is
trick.
typically the mill?
A lot.
Like half?
Oh, I honestly, I would say more, but
Mm.
that's not my forte or my background.
So we can drop that
I
50
can't quote you
million
this.
pounds for an open pit. We can slice it in half.
I would even say more than that.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. It was just something I thought that
No
I had. But yeah.
worries. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's why I think things can move at smaller than anticipated sizes.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Um, let's see. So we talked about that on Hook. Well, we've covered Hook, 6 to 7 million, mostly Ackio. But that's really going to be the bulk of it. But then you have what, 3 to 4 million, depending on how big the Hook program is, 3 to 4 million left to flow through to spend on Bear and Shadow.
Yep.
Um, what's happening chronologically? You said June is when you're going to start on Ackio specifically. By
Yep.
the time you're done, how far are we? September-ish?
Yeah, about that, September, October.
Okay. So what happens next?
As Ackio is drilling in June, we will have a second drill that is helicopter supported, drilling Bear, Bear, Hook. So the drill that's going to drill Ackio is going to stay on Ackio and its immediate surrounding area.
Hmm.
We're going to have a second drill at some point on the project as well, doing the exploration drill holes on Hook. That drill will also be drilling the Bear project and Shadow project. Shadow's a little bit trickier just because we're still in consultation with no visible path forward at the moment.
Hmm.
So although we plan to drill it, may not happen, at which point we can deploy that capital to any of our other projects and extend those exploration programs. Bear, we'd like to get drilling again relatively quickly as well. There is a phenomenal gravity target on there, right at a place where we think it looks ripe for discovery, and we'll put some drill holes into there. It's quite encouraging. And then after that, then we fly the drill over to Hook to do that exploration. Then we fly the drill over to Shadow. If we have made a discovery on Catharsis or any other project, we'd probably have a third drill, just drilling off, trying to advance that. But if that does happen, then it's a good problem to have, and at that point, we'd probably have to raise more money at a higher share price.
What's the split in terms of expenses between Bear and Shadow? Because you have again 3 to 4 million left. What's going where?
We have about 1.5 million planned for Bear, similar to Catharsis, maybe a little bit less, but we also have a little bit more add on, about 500,000 to 750,000 for airborne exploration, for airborne geophysical surveys. And then Shadow, the same, about another 1.5 million committed for exploration and another 5.5 million for airborne exploration.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's a nice sort of even split. Um, where do you need the First Nations permissions? Like what part of the exploration process are you gonna need the First Nations permissions on Shadow?
On every aspect of it. We have recently submitted a drill proposal to the Minister of Environment and to the First Nations, which we are still consulting about.
Hmm.
They feel that we are too close to the community, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see how things play out. But right now, yeah, Shadow just remains kind of in the doldrums. We still retain it, and we've identified what we believe to be our favorite target areas. So whether or not we can resolve any of the hindrances to move Shadow forward, we will have enough exploration expenditures on that project to cover our favorite target areas for at least 10 years. So if over a 10-year time frame, and I know that sounds like a very long time, and it is, but those target areas would stay in Baselode's hands for that duration. That if the community decides all of a sudden that they're pro exploration in their neck of the woods and invite Baselode to immediately go in there and drill, perfect. Then we'd be able to drill what we think are prospective and get out of there. We hit success, great. If we miss, then we're out of there. Simple as that.
Hmm.
And that's what we're trying to convey, is that if we're not successful, which is typically what exploration is, uh, most people don't make discoveries. It's a difficult business, and especially after you've made a few discoveries, and then people expect you to always make a discovery with every single drill hole. There's a lot of pressure. It doesn't always happen like that. But you know, if we miss on every drill hole, we would walk away from that project, and they would never see us again. That's what we're trying to convey. It's like we could be gone
Hmm.
very quickly.
Sort of a win-win for them then in that case, I assume, because if you find something obviously beneficial to the community, and if you don't find something, you're out of there as soon as possible. But ultimately, for you to make a discovery that is directly dependent on the First Nations is yes or no.
Yeah,
When are you going to have that?
no idea.
Hmm. They don't give you a timeline or something like that?
No.
Okay. But what do they want? Like, what can you do to speed up the process or improve the probability of you getting that? Yes. Is there something you can do?
Just maintain constant communications and trying to de-risk, trying to show that the way we operate is not in the manner that they think. Exploration, especially in northern Saskatchewan, has a bad reputation, not because of northern Saskatchewan exploration, but because the Alberta tar sands.
Hmm.
It's crazy the amount of people, and I think that's because a lot of people from the north have all worked in the tar sands in Alberta, and they see what things are like there. That's not what exploration is like in northern Saskatchewan. It is far from it. Like one drill hole to explore in the tar sands, looking for oil and gas is they have a huge pad. It's a mammoth pad. It's like I don't even know the dimensions of it, but it's a big drill program, a big drill, a lot of clearing. With what we do, especially with helicopter support, tiny. There's no land scraping. You just cut down a couple trees, you build up a pad, and you drill. And the drill is less than the size of a room typically.
Yeah.
It's not a big, yeah, it's not a big piece of equipment.
Hmm.
And that's yeah, so trying to just convey that message that nobody would even notice us, the environment wouldn't even notice us. We won't leave any impact that would be noticeable, once we're gone. That's what we're trying to convey.
Hmm. Okay. Are we talking Canadian rooms or European rooms? Because I can almost touch all four
Yeah.
walls of the room I'm in. So,
I would have to say Canadian room. I know what your European rooms are like. They're tiny. They're our closets.
but thank you. That's very kind of you. But no, no, you're right actually. So fair enough. But you
Have you
recently
not seen the
signed.
amount of land we have in Canada?
It's true. Yeah, you've got 30
Jeez.
million people living there.
Yeah, exactly. We've
Yeah.
got so much land, it's crazy.
Yeah, we have almost half of that in Belgium, and the country is tiny.
You've
So
got culture, we've got land.
good point. Yeah. I the agreement that you recently signed with the Yathi Nene nations.
Yep.
What's where is that? What's that about?
Specific to hook and just
Okay.
hook alone.
So Hook's
And
covered.
that's
Everybody's happy and
yep.
healthy up there. That's it. Catharsis
Yep.
is covered.
Yep.
Shadow and Bear still dependent on. Is it one nation or how many nations are we talking about? Shadow and
Is
Bear.
Shadow is really just one nation.
Hmm.
There are a couple others that we have to consult with as well, but they're not as touchy as the main group that we're dealing with for Shadow, which
Okay.
right in their neighborhood. The Bear is covered under Catharsis as well, or will be very soon. It's with the same First Nation that we signed for Catharsis, so we'll incorporate that. We'll amalgamate Bear into the Catharsis agreement.
Good. Well, I hope that helps you keep the discussion going with the other nations as well. The recent agreement that you've signed and that you're going to hopefully extend here onto Bear. And well, I know I mean, you're trying to be obviously respectful to the people there, rightfully so. And yeah, I mean, I just hope it works out for everybody. Um, Good. Okay, so that basically covers everything that we talked about. About 70% of what you're doing in total, give or take, goes into, is that right? Yeah,
Yeah,
more or
into a
less.
Hook project. Yeah.
Goes into the Hook project as it should, as it makes sense right now with the discovery. Okay. Yeah. Well
Yeah,
then,
it's discovery plus discovery potential plus discovery along the same structure plus discovery along a parallel structure. So yes, Hook will get the bulk of the exploration budget
hmm,
because
yeah,
it's already proven to be it's fruitful.
yeah. From a risk reward perspective, it just makes
Yeah.
sense to me at this
Yep.
stage. What else is happening though? In the meanwhile, that's not necessarily geology related or whatever, but as you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, is a takeover right next door to your Ackio discovery came as a surprise to me. I think most people specifically, not the other one because it was in a deal with three companies. The other two companies I didn't care too much about, but this was kind of a surprise. Is there something you can and want to comment on?
Not much, to be honest. I think it was an interesting deal. It's interesting to have new partners, but it doesn't really affect us to the sense that we've still got a partner to the north who will have GMZ. We do believe Ackio and GMZ should be amalgamated.
Mm.
And with the with the new owners, are there potential synergies to really move that forward? And that's something we will investigate in the new year.
Well, they should move forward together because apparently, geologically, as you've told me, they're highly likely to be one thing.
Yeah.
Um, w-
GMZ doesn't move forward with Ackio. That's the thing.
mm,
Ackio is shallower, it's larger. Uh, Grades are basically similar across the two. Just we have more mineralization, we have shallower mineralization. If you want to go into a mining scenario, what do you mine first? The shallowest material,
yeah.
always.
Okay. But you have time to get a potential deal on it, an option or whatever it might be. You have time.
Yes,
Okay. How are you approaching it? Do you what do you go? Just knock on their door, call them
pretty
up or
well.
whatever.
Yep.
Hmm.
Oh, we know the guys behind ATHA well enough.
Hmm.
We don't have to go to Australia. The
Right.
CEO Troy Boisjoli is in Saskatchewan as well.
Hmm. That's more.
Basically Saskatoon. So we're all half an hour drive away from each other basically.
Mhm. Good. Um, and that's more in Steven's wheelhouse than I assume to do these things, or is that something you have to deal with on top of all
No,
the
it's
rest?
both of us. I
Hmm.
appreciate Steven's history and his experience with a lot of this, as I am an explorationist by trade. My focus for decades has been on the rocks,
Hmm.
and rightfully so. But yes, I'm not adverse to making any of these moves or making these any of these introductions. I relish it. I like to take part in them and have done previously with other companies.
Hmm. Are you visiting all the projects or any of the projects you're going up to camp this year? Next
I
year,
plan
sorry.
to.
Oh,
I plan to. Yes,
yeah.
I would like to get there for Catharsis. I didn't visit this year, and I'd like to get there for Hook as well.
Hmm.
Bear, maybe. If we're hitting on Bear, for sure I'll get out there. Anywhere we hit, I will get out there.
Right.
Um, if we get out to Shadow, I will certainly be out there. And yeah, try to make myself much more visible on the ground this year.
Mm. Okay, good. Well, that's pretty much it. I had one last note on just thinking, talking about what you're doing for marketing. Obviously, you're talking to me, which I appreciate, so thank you for that. And then also your conferences and whatever, you still doing the same tempo as last year? Or do you plan to ramp up or ramp down?
Same tempo.
Hmm.
We're just trying to find the right conferences to attend. I think some of them have been misses, some of them have been hugely successful. Just meeting the right people, meeting the right investors, talking to investors who walk away saying, "Oh, I'm going to take a piece of this," and then next thing you know, you see the tick in the share price after you talk with the guy. It's no, there are some conferences that work very well, and we will continue to do those. We're not trying to be over promotional. Again, money goes into the ground. That's the main focus.
Hmm.
Today's digital world, you can actually access a lot more people digitally without traveling here, there, and everywhere. And it's a great cost saving right there. But you still need that in person. There's no way, no doubt about it. And you can't do a virtual conference. If anyone has done one of those, or like I've been at the booth of a virtual conference, and it was not my cup of tea. Rather interact with people face to face.
Yeah, I find those. I had you told me this a year ago, I would not have agreed for my situation. But I've been to a couple of conferences this year, close to each other. Also, yeah, like I met you in London again this year, and it's much better. It really is much better. So I've changed my thoughts on that. But that's true. Okay, James. So that's it. I don't have any other questions. What am I missing or forgetting to ask here?
I think we've covered everything. And I do plan to cover everything in more detail, more technical detail in 2024. Uh, Before we started recording this call, I mentioned that we had that Baselode is getting back to the roots of what we did better than I think everyone else, not just an exploration side of things, but really promoting and educating the investors and just the investment community as a whole, whether people are invested in Baselode or not, doesn't matter. But what we want to put out to the general public are educational pieces that I think will help people understand Athabasca geology and understand the Athabasca uranium scenario and why some mines go and some mines don't, and what do we see on all of our projects? What are the technical merits of all of our projects? So lots of videos coming out throughout the new year. At least
Hmm.
that's the plan.
I hope I can be a part of that because I can use some education as well. But yeah, good chat. Thank you so much for investing your time in me.
Thanks, Antonio. Always a pleasure.